How's it going, you guys? James here to Some Arthur Podcast. So on this episode, we've got a lady by the name of Annie Hardy on, lead singer for the band Giant Drag. When I started this podcast, I've got a lot of interest in things. I got interest in film. I've got interest in art. So as of now, like, people were trying to get on this podcast. We're making a list. Me and my brother making a list of people we'd like to get into contact with. Annie Hardy for years had been one of the people that I really wanted to have on because her band back in the mid-2000s was my soundtrack to my high school years. She's a very interesting person. We did have we got the pleasure of interviewing her. She was very cool, very nice, and she got her hands into quite a few things. She's got her hands in some films. She does art, and she lives in North Hollywood. And when we conducted the interview the night prior, she had a show. So she's she's doing the club circuit thing, doing the she's performing. That is so awesome. I love live acts and anything in front of being in front of a bass guitar, a drum set is cool to me. I mean, I love going to shows. I've been going to shows as of recently. We've been going to shows, me and my brother, checking out bands, and it's something more. It's awesome going to those things. So here we have Annie Hardy from Giant Drag coming on the Some Arthur Podcast. Listen up.
We cannot hear you, no.
Well, don't really know what I should do. I guess we'll do it like this, and I don't have to wear headphones, right?
That's awesome. Good afternoon. I appreciate you being here. Welcome to the Some Arthur Podcast. We're coming out of San Antonio, Texas, so thank you again for taking the time. We really appreciate it. I'm Jonathan Weaver. I'm also joined here by my brother James Weaver.
I'm James. How are you?
Yeah, just excited to touch base. We'll just want to touch base too. How are you doing today? Where are you coming in from? Are you in California right now?
Yeah, I'm in North Hollywood, California, here in my bedroom with a bunny rabbit and a bearded dragon, and I was just outside trying to keep the plants alive.
Hey, it's hot out. I'm surprised the Zoom demons got to you with all the crosses in the background.
They always do. Nothing keeps them at bay. It's like I couldn't find the email. I was typing in the name of the podcast, and it's like I have technological impossibilities occur with me every day. The phrase I hear the most often if I go out shopping at a store is, "I don't know what's happening. It's never done this before." And I'm like, yeah, I know.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for joining us, Annie.
So you had a show last night? That's awesome. I mean, last night.
It was okay. Talk about demons there. It was in Venice Beach at Dennis Hopper's old house.
Oh, cool.
So that was kind of cool. It wasn't like a real show. It was just my friend E.M. Graff. He had his first art show, and he had asked me to play a set during it. And, last night there was plenty of drunk people who felt like talking as I stood up there and, basically read my diary in song. But that's okay. Drunk people have no, spatial awareness to be like, hey, I'm standing right in the front of the crowd and I'm talking. And my voice is almost louder than this bitch with a microphone. Maybe I should move outside. But, even when that happens, it's still good because I just made up a song about how they were talking. And I don't think they even noticed. I was literally saying the guy in the white shirt, and then another girl who was extra disruptive. I made up an improvised song about her having HPV. And I really liked that one. And, eventually someone asked them to please go outside, and they kind of did. But yeah, it's always a challenge every time I have to interact with the rest of the world.
There you go. And let me ask you that: would that top your top three of concert hecklers, or where do you stand? What are your top three? What's your top one right now?
I cut my teeth on British hecklers who would. I remember one tour, Giant Drag was opening for this band called The Cribs that were really huge. And So the opening band's prone to heckling, and back then, this was before, cancel culture and Me Too, and people would constantly tell me to take my tits out and stuff like that. Well, I don't think I've ever been heckled and not made the heckler sort of regret it. My top heckle might be the cover of my live album picture where some guy, it was so upsetting because the heckling was so bad. He's like, "Are you going to play the saxophone? Like, this isn't even funny." And so there's a part in the last song called Kevin is Gay, where there's like a pause in the song. And I went to kick him, but then I was like, "You can't kick him. He'll sue you." And so I just planted my foot right on his mouth and sort of dragged it slowly and sensually down his chest. And someone snapped a pic, and I used it for the cover of our live album.
That's fantastic. Slow and sensually, you kicked him. That's great.
Okay, so the name Giant Drag, for me, it's got, when I first heard about you, I hate to admit it, but we were partying way too much, and we were like, I think I know what she means by this, but for us, it was like Giant Drag, like maybe the morning after a lot of partying. I mean, for me, that's what came to mind, and then the way that you sing and the stuff that you talk about, I was like, maybe there's some kind of correlation, but is there any?
I was definitely partying a little too much back in the inception of Giant Drag, for sure. But it was more like, unfortunately, it was sort of like my way of life and my general outlook on the world. Like everything was just kind of a giant drag. But now you search Giant Drag and you really get a lot of results for RuPaul's Giant Drag Race. So hold on, let me get a chair. I feel so far away from you guys. I don't know why that should matter, but it seems like it does. Okay.
There we go.
And my butt was slipping off the edge of the bed. So this is so bad.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Definitely. And I want to take it back a little bit for our listeners that may not be familiar or too familiar with you. I really want to ground us in how you got your start in music and even started dipping your toes, if you will, in film as in your more formative years. I know you were out of San Clemente, California.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you kind of touch base and got your initial interest in music and even started to maybe even look at your initial interest in film and in acting as well?
Right. Well, yeah, I grew up in South Orange County, which is like not the place that anybody like me wants to grow up per se. But I was like the only girl who wrote songs and played guitar that I knew, and would try to like start bands with other girls who just kind of stood there and sing. I'm like, why am I always doing all the heavy lifting here? There must be a place somewhere out there where I can find bandmates, And so I moved up here, and within a couple of years, my friend Georgia Hardstark, who is on that My Favorite Murder podcast now, she was dating this guy Doug Jones, and I was Georgia's friend. Micah Calabrese, my Giant Drag's first drummer, was Doug's friend. And so we became friends and we started playing music. It took no time at all before, like, we had one show, then two, then three, and then it was like taking off. I think there's like, what's his name? Deepak Chopra has this like 7 spiritual laws of success. And that would have fallen under the law of least effort because it really was almost no effort, and that dictates like you do your littlest amount of effort and you reap the largest reward. But I don't know that that's like a good thing for someone like me, because it as a musician, it doesn't feel like anything that I'm doing is really my own, like it comes from somewhere else. So I don't like base much of my like I don't put too much stock in it, basically, because it feels really like I'm just the messenger. And so it kind of gives you imposter syndrome, and like, entertainment industry is disgusting and difficult. And and like, you know, you're a sensitive and fragile person, and, you know, drug addiction and calamity ensues. So somewhere along those lines, I sort of like, you know, I lost my record deal after a couple years, and I was like, ugh, like, what have I done? Well, unbeknownst to me, I was like undergoing some sort of spiritual awakening that was weird, because I had just written an album and recorded it called Waking Up Is Hard to Do. And it took 7 years for that album to come out. And once it did, it finally made sense. It was like a psychic future album. And then my best friend and frequent collaborator and producer, Joe Cardamom, who used to be in a band called the Icarus Line, a couple of years back, was making Michael Grodner was making a film, like a half real, half fiction film called The Icarus Line Must Die. And hey, good scene. And I played myself in the film. And yeah, I've done film a few times. I was in a Spike Jonze short film called I'm Here. Whoa! Right after he did, sorry, there's animal madness happening in here. Right after he did Where the Wild Things Are, he did a short film, and it was kind of like, but with robots, sort of, if that makes sense. And so I was like a robot version myself. My character's name's Annie, and I improvised. Yeah, it seems to be a theme. My real name, not totally a real movie all the way, partial fiction, and then improvised dialogue. And that seems to be the terms under which I'll do acting.
So working with Spike Jonze, what was that like after Where the Wild Things Are? Was that?
It was cool. I mean, Spike's a very cool, down to earth person. You know, he got his start like making music videos for Beastie Boys and stuff like that. And he really knows how to like harvest the creativity from the very creative people around him. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really fun, and I actually loved it. I think that might have given me the bug, but that was like the, you know, big budget bug. But, you know, I'll do any budget, obviously. But I got to like sit around in a trailer all day, and I was like, this is great. Oh my God, there's a toilet under the couch cushion. Like, this is incredible. And yeah, anytime that I can be treated like an absolute grown-up baby, where somebody's feeding me a couple times a day and just like I'm just like stuck in a playpen going goo goo gaga, I'm down with that.
Very cool. All right, so so you just hit a point right now. You're like how you got connected with Spike Jonze and stuff. One of the things that I'd been wanting to ask you for a really long time is, so the song Wicked Game is a very, very well done song by yourself and your band, very sultry version of it. How did you get connected to the promo for Nip Tuck?
Oh, I was on Interscope Records at that time, and DIY is great, I guess. Not really, but like when you have an entire like department just designed to like submit your music for TV and film sync licenses, you end up getting a bunch of them, and we did really well with that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I think someone just pitched it to them because they were looking, and voila. Granted, I didn't write this song because Chris Isaak did, so I saw no money from that. And
yeah, it's just a very, because there's been other people that have covered it, but the way that you had done it was very sultry version of it, more than, you know, because it's a guy song, but you made it very sultry. I had also wanted to ask is, what was it like seeing it on TV? Like, oh man, like that's me. What was the?
It was cool because I watched so much TV back then. Like, I lived on my couch. I look back and I'm like, how was that me? Now I'm living the exact opposite. It's like I wake up and I'm doing stuff all day till I collapse in bed at night. But back then I was a couch pig. You know, I just sat there watching my favorite shows. That was up in the top 5, you know, and so I I saw it and I was like, ooh, cool. That's
Nice.
when I really would get impressed with something I had done. Not when I was like, accomplishing stuff out in the real world, but when it was transferred over to the television realm and it actually made its way into coming into my very small life that I was living right then. So yeah, that was a great year. I think we played Reading and Leeds Festival that year. I think I was voted 50th coolest person in the world and music's hottest girl by psychopathic readers of Enemy magazine. But nothing hit quite like that Nip Tuck thing, because I really liked that show. If only we had a time machine and could have gone back to the original episodes of Beverly Hills 90210, that would have been the best. Or if the OC had option to play a song, that's what I wanted the most. I watched all my friends' bands get their songs on that show, everyone but me.
As you look at all these, even the films that you've done and are planning to do right now, I know you have God's Country in the works, and you're in Dash Cam, and all the work you've done with Giant Dragon. As you mentioned, you feel yourself kind of as a vessel or a vehicle for this creativity that flows through you. As you've seen, experienced all that throughout the years, what keeps you motivated? What really keeps you pushing, and how do you get that fulfillment and satisfaction from whichever avenue of creativity you go, either in film, music? What do you look for, or what drives you?
It really has to just be something that, I don't know. That's a good question, because a lot in the last, I guess, year, making Dashcam was incredible. It was the highlight of my entire life. But the second part of releasing Dashcam has been somewhat heartbreaking and just difficult for me. And the world is in such a state that it's like, what am I doing here? I see that I have a place and a purpose, but it feels a lot less like it's supposed to be doing music or doing film. I don't know. I do whatever comes to me, really. Whatever shakes out. I've realized that as much as I can try to control things and make this, that, or the other happen, I can also just sort of step into the flow state where it's if I'm in that divinely inspired state in my life and I'm out there being of service to, my fellow man and interacting minimally with the world, like interesting and weird things like Dashcam will just arrive on my doorstep, and all I have to do is say yes. So, God's Country was just a one-night thing. I said yes to that. And I don't know, part of me wants to start saying no just to see what happens, because part of me really wanted to say no to Dashcam at several instances, but as I always think to myself right before I sometimes make a mistake, but sometimes don't, what's the worst that could happen, And it's well, now I'm starring in the only film that gets you canceled in real life because of something that's in a movie and isn't even real. And that's interesting. But, the one thing that does keep me going is God, because everything's God's will. And it's basically just my job to sort of figure out why things happen and what is the reason, what is the purpose of it, because it's all happening for me, not to me, it's all training me for some, big lesson or trial, or I don't know. I look at this world as sort of like a holographic learning toilet. And all we're meant to do here is come here, live our purpose as people who can create, because we're the only ones who can create. There's demons in the lower fourth dimension. They can see us. They hate us because we have the ability to create. We're made in God's image. God's the creator. So that must be our purpose here, right? We must be put here to speak our own unique truth out into the world and find the other people who it resonates with and tribe up and figure out what these lessons are so that we don't have to keep coming back here if that's a thing. I don't know. Like, so we can get out of here and just like go experience like that feeling and place, that home that we long for, that none of us quite know what or where it is.
Sharing that and sharing that vulnerability and that perspective, because I think as a person, particularly in your position where you influence through your art, through your voice, through your music, I think that's an interesting perspective to keep in mind, because it's such a fast-paced environment. It may seem, at least to me, I'm not in it, but it may seem fast-paced. It's great to just pause and kind of reevaluate and think about what your experiences are and how those experiences layer who you are going to become.
Yeah. And how they can help other people, because what tends to be a negative experience that you walk through, or some kind of trial, ends up being something that you can use to help somebody else who's going through it later. And when you do take that negativity and you use it to help someone, it's like that negativity transforms into like something semi-precious. So that's like life alchemy or something.
I have a follow-up to that, and I'll pass it over to my brother. Do you have outside of music and film, and I guess maybe even art, do you have a go-to activity or something where you're like, you know what, I have to reset, I need time for myself, that you look forward to? Is there some activity or something that you do?
Gardening. It's like so grounding, so healing, so like fulfilling, and it's real. It's in the 3D. Like music, you can kind of touch it, but like mostly it's this like invisible thing. But gardening is something that you, like my hands, my like stained, cracked, dirt-filled hands, like it's just the energies of earth are so healing. Like God is in nature. So when we're out in nature in any form, it just heals you. The negative, I mean, it's science, science is real. And negative ions are found in nature, and those are healing. Positive ions, which are the bad ones, are what's in these computers and the phones and the stuff that's killing us. And those throw your body out of whack. I'm really into Dr. Wilhelm Reich and his findings about orgonite, and he was like the first person to scientifically prove the existence of what he called orgone energy, which is also like life force or chi or ki or whatever you want to call it. And basically his cure for all ailments was like to have his patients sit in this orgone accumulator box, which just was the energies of nature, basically, that can filter out negativity out of your energetic field and return you to your, perfect health.
Absolutely. Okay, so what's your opinion on the state of music as of now? I mean, everything with Spotify and all this stuff. So like we come from, me and my brother, we have interest in seeing bands as yourself, live acts, but it looks as of now there's not really much of that going on as much as it was when we were listening to you in the mid 2000s. Right. What's your opinion on what do you think is going to happen with all this?
My outlook is not good for the future. I mean, music has not been a good industry for someone like me, because I came up pre-streaming services. So when I take it to the streaming services, because I operated in physical CDs before, there was only Napster and stuff when my album came out. So I don't have the numbers that I would have if, Spotify existed when my first record came out. So it looks like I'm a new band to Spotify. And it's like, it makes it all such an ass fuck, mind fuck. And it makes it difficult for, me to do anything, really. Like people keep saying, oh, it's going to turn in favor of the musician. But I don't know if I'm the type of musician it's going to turn in favor of, per se, especially with like the political nature of the entertainment industry as a whole. Like, we've got a bunch of left-leaning libtards who see this movie and if these people are not wise, they're like, oh, Annie Hardy's a Trumper. And I already have a lot of people that used to work with me that won't work with me. It's really bizarre. It's like, I'm not a Trumper. Sorry, I voted for Kanye. I wouldn't have voted at all if I had to go somewhere and do it because I don't think any of this shit's real. And B, even if I was a Trumper, who gives a fuck? Like, who gives a fuck? Since when? Like, how did Mexican Summer drop Ariel Pink for going to the insurrection? Since when are we, it's insane. The whole thing's insane. I try not to get too focused on it because it just makes me want to quit music and quit the entire world and go live in a hole in Wyoming or something. But I think in the future, all we have to look forward to is virtual reality performances of a hologram in our living room or some fucked up shit. If people don't turn off the fucking TV and stop listening to the news, stop believing in everything that's going on. I mean, have you guys had COVID? No?
Not as of, yeah.
One yes and one no. I had it once in England where there was no sunlight to keep me healthy. And I'm like, okay, this was, that was not pleasant, but here we all are. Like, when are people going to use experiential evidence to realize, like, hey man, there's something afoot. There's something that's dishonest. Maybe these entities like Big Pharma, the government, and the entertainment industry, who have historically not been honest with me or been looking out for my best, my best life, maybe they're still as they were before, and perhaps there's a giant conspiracy afoot, and maybe I should think outside of the box and think with my own brain. But I guess there's not a lot of people who have that ability or something. So we're doomed, and yeah, music's doomed with it. Have you heard? I mean, I haven't listened to music in 10 years, to be honest. I don't, as a connoisseur, I haven't listened since I was 31, and now I'm 41. So I don't get it. There's no, unless a new Kanye record comes out, and there was like 1 week where I listened to Frank Ocean. Is there anything else? No, that's it. And so I don't care. I don't care for it. I don't have like, oh, I want to play with so-and-so, because I don't care at all. I just don't.
That's a good point. There's just so many mediums and so much information that's being distributed, and it's like you mentioned, like people aren't double checking their facts or using logic. That's excellent.
Then with music, people are using Logic and Ableton and Pro Tools and everything else, and the market's flooded with so much shit that like even a legacy artist like Bob Dylan or somebody can put out a record and they're not going to get like there's too much shit out there. There's too much entertainment. Like people's minds are ADHD'd. People like the most successful kind of music is like EDM, electronic dance, drum and bass stuff. I heard that last night at the art show I played at, and I was like, this is robot music by robots for robots. This is terrible.
If you could teleport yourself, Annie, to any era in music, let's say pre-1990, where you would like to live and appreciate, where people aren't using auto-tune, where people aren't using electronic music and just sticking to acoustics, maybe with Sinatra or somewhere, where would you go, or where do you see yourself?
Oh, I'd go to Laurel Canyon or wherever, with Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and all that kind of stuff. That's where I would go, to the like folk rock era. I think probably, yeah.
So like, I mean, what was it like the mid 2000s, like touring? And I mean, because like bands as yourself, you had Incubus, you had maybe like back right before it peaked, where it was like, with the online music and all that. What was it like then when you were touring and making music? What was the what was the air like? And If I
It
could
was
be a
the
fly
end
on
of
the
an
wall.
era. You could tell that it was the end of an era. We got one of the last like decent record deals. They were starting something called a 360 deal, where the label would get money from your publishing and your merch or something ridiculous like that. And because of illegal downloading and stuff, we didn't step into it at the big money era. We missed it by a couple of years, really. And like, because before everyone was getting just like the money that they have to hemorrhage on whatever, just like I think the movie industry has that, although not Blumhouse apparently, but most of these like record labels can just sink tons of money into people. But we were on a subsidiary of Interscope, this label called Kickball that this lovely woman, Wendy Higgs, started. And, we didn't have big budget for recording. We actually made our album at Downtown Rehearsal, this horrendous practice space in downtown LA. But my wonderful friends, Louis Castle and James Berrien, they produced the album. And so we did a lot of tracking in there, and I was like she band theirs rehearsing, and it was like kind of schizophrenic inducing. But then when we went on tour, it was like touring in America. Said my internet is unstable. Touring in America seemed pointless, always big expanses of land. And so we went to England, where luckily, once England likes you and America sees that, then America likes you. So this guy, Mark Bowen from Wichita Records, put out Giant Drag's first EP, and that's like a tastemaker. They put out the Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs, and so everyone's like, ooh, that's all you needed back then. And then America was in. And then we were press darlings, and everything was just like so easy. We played Coachella, we played Reading, Leeds, all these European festivals. And it was so easy that I completely took it for granted. But all the other bands would think, oh, there's Flea running around in the fucking beer garden in this weird, jumpsuit thing. And then it was all pretty surreal. And it felt like nothing, and it kind of still does, It all, you think that some sort of accomplishment in music or film is gonna fill that God-shaped hole, and nothing does. It just, you feel exactly the same. You feel exactly as miserable. Everything was still a huge giant drag. I actually got more increasingly miserable the more successful I got. And I just became kind of like an intolerable narc bitch, And so, that doesn't speak to what touring was like back there, but it was probably miserable for my drummer, Micah. I'm certain it was. He quit the band a couple times, and it's just like, it's a lifestyle that breeds narcissism and unhappiness. And if it wasn't like that, then you wouldn't see all these musicians who die prematurely of suicide, drug overdose, or whatever, It's not real, basically. It's like, it's not real. Music is like witchcraft, and that's one of the main reasons I don't listen to it anymore. When I'm listening to music, it pulls out these feelings of longing or of sadness, or, it really manipulates my emotions. And it makes it so that I don't want to be creative, because I'm then comparing myself. Oh, I'll never write a song as good as, one of my favorite, like a Beatles song, a Neil Young song, and I start comparing, just like social media's getting us all to do, like comparing my insides to that outsides of that thing. And then I just feel not good enough. And any accomplishments I do get, it's like I have imposter syndrome. And so I don't know, I just kind of don't care about any of that. And it's like it's detrimental to my career, obviously, but my life is a lot happier for sort of not caring, because if I put my stock in how I feel about myself in the success of my career, then I'll never be my life will be like this. Oh, I don't care what the world is like. I expect the world to reject me just like they did to Jesus. It says that in the Bible. If you're down with me, then everyone's going to hate you, to paraphrase. And I'm down with Jesus, and that's, not something I ever wanted for my life or ever expected for my life, but that's what happened. So it really puts a damper on my weekend and touring plans, because this is an industry of upside down crosses instead of right side up ones, basically.
Appreciate that insight. It's interesting because you when you hear about that industry, a lot of they don't focus on maybe the things that are really core to a person, or how a person maintains their identity, maintains their happiness. They focus more on the superficial, transitory pleasures of that industry. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious too, what advice would you give to yourself with your acquired wisdom that you have now, that you acquired over the years, and just your experience from all your decisions leading up to where you're at now? What advice would you give to yourself as maybe that 6-year-old that bought that guitar, or just guide you as you go through life?
I would tell myself, don't let fear inform your decisions, because a lot of times we'll be afraid of something happening and we'll take actions to avoid that thing happening. But the actions we take indirectly lead to that thing happening. And so when we do things to seek to avoid feeling some negative feeling, nobody ever taught me what do you do when you feel a super overwhelming negative feeling? I would have told myself what to do, I guess, because that fear of, it's not even the feeling, it's the fear of feeling the feeling. And it drove me to run for so many years to the most unhealthy things possible, just to avoid what could have been 2 minutes of feeling bad. And if I knew how to self-soothe and to just accept, okay, this is how I feel right now. What is this feeling here to teach me? What is the purpose of this? Then I could have lived a completely different life. But this was the one I was meant to live. And that would be the other advice. Don't should yourself. Don't be I should have done this. Here's this one impasse where I made the wrong decision. My life went south. That's never been the case. My life has never gone off track. God's always had control, because nothing happens outside of the divine organization of my life and everyone's life. So it's takes a lot of the pressure off, because for a long time I thought I was the one who was determining, oh, I'm going to have a good life or I'm going to have a bad life. And to a degree, I have free will and everything. So that's kind of true, but it's ultimately I'm living the life that I've been, preordained to live. And I can feel that in my spirit. So it must be true.
So just before we just wanted to ask, Hearts and Unicorns, I thought it was it hit me in high school, that album. It was very it's just kind of hard to explain, but it's kind of it just kind of how wine, how wine makes it. That's what it did to me. It kind of I just absorbed it. What was the recording on for that album? How did you guys go into recording that album? And is it a crunch time type of thing, or was it just hey, let's just see what happens and take it?
No, it wasn't crunch time at all. That was our first real record and our first record on a real label. So we had kind of a lot of time to get it finished and a lot of time to mess around and sort of, do whatever. And I've always believed in bringing my friends with me wherever I go. So there's a lot of guests on that album. And there's just it was like fun, it was really fun. And I like creating an environment of community, musically and otherwise. And like I said, we recorded it in the downtown rehearsal, like 12-story practice space. So it was hectic, and like things were just kind of taking off. We had just put the EP out overseas in England, and like things were happening for us, but hadn't happened to the point of detriment yet. And it was just like the last innocent era of like, the beginning's always the best. People are always like, their first album is the best. It's like, well, yeah, why do you think that is? Because once you get fame and success or some semblance thereof, it's like entities step in with bundles of cash that make you do something you wouldn't have done otherwise. Not pick a producer you don't want to work with, or like, just like things get fucked up. More money, more problems, and just like the capitalist, like, major label control mechanism, it comes in and it sort of molests you and leaves you rocking back and forth in the shower crying. For most people, for most of us, we're the little tax write-offs that were being paid for by 9 Inch Nails until they left, Interscope. And then we became, dropped. There was like, I remember when we did get dropped, there was a mass firing of all manner of people at Interscope. And I think, Wendy, our A&R person, was so lovely. I think she made sure to get me dropped because she was leaving or quitting or getting fired. I don't know which. And once your A&R person is gone, you don't have anyone invested in you anymore. You're going to get lost in between, cracks in some bigger guy's desk. And so, in so doing, I ended up, getting paid and not losing the rights to my second album, which, I got word the day before we were meant to go into the studio that, production is halted. And then the next day I got word that I was being dropped from the label. And that was like, whoa, like, did I fuck up? And then I found out that the producer we were working with had just done the same thing to somebody else. It was just like a perfect storm. I guess it was nobody's fault. But like, I've been, I'm like I don't have the best of luck. Giant Drag is a band that's lived up completely to its name. Like, why is everything so unnecessarily difficult?
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I want to ask, I'll ask one last question. I'll pass it over to my brother for the last question. But as you're talking about these experiences, I'm kind of connecting it to what you mentioned around your green thumb and working with the garden, how there's creation, there's destruction, there's cultivation, there's growth, there's time that passes by. In that respect, and I'm sure we'll take a metaphorical interpretation to this, but what advice would you give for cultivating flowers and cultivating your garden for people that are going to start that if they hear that Annie Hardy is working in the garden?
Great question. I would say do not underestimate the importance of feeding everything. You need those basic building blocks of nutrients, of goodness, of healthy fertilizer, of organic material in order for your plants to really thrive and succeed. I don't think I realized that for a long time. And my favorite organic fertilizer is powdered rocks. And I love that. And yeah, it's like if you're not coming from a balanced, solid, healthy place, that's what opens you up to infestations, demonic, parasitic life forms, aka bugs, spider mites, whatever. They can't feed on a healthy plant. It's the ones that are living in a nutrient deficiency that the bugs will go to attack, to kill, steal, and destroy, so to speak. So work that metaphor however one would like, but like proper watering and proper feeding, feed yourself. Like when we're watching things, listening to things, anything that you take in, you're eating that, you're absorbing that, whether it's TV, movies, music, books, whatever. So make sure you're feeding yourself the right shit. Otherwise, darkness begets more darkness, and the world is pretty shrouded as it is. So try to take in as much goodness and put out as much goodness. And remember that just doing that is helping the world so much. Like just being a person who can radiate positive, intentions and words and actions, it offsets so many people who are doing the opposite. So many Twitter trolls talking shit with opinions that they think matter for some reason, you just have to, as they say, be the change that you would like to see in the world.
Absolutely. Well, you keep doing what you're doing. Actually, I'm very happy that you answered our message. I thought it was going to be a shot in the dark because I was like, there is no chance the singer that made that song or made those songs is going to get back to us, and you got back to us. We're so happy to hear from you. If you ever need anything, let us know. I hope that once again we can have you again. It was very fun having you on. If anything, I feel like you've become like a staple for indie music, and I mean, if anything, I would just keep striving because I mean, even you've got our attention for sure, and that's a lot of us behind you. So, just like I said, just keep trucking, and I really enjoyed talking to you today, and we hope to see you again, and hopefully you enjoyed this interview.
I definitely did. Thank you so much for having me. And since I'm here, I'll give you guys the inside drop. I don't know if you know about it already, but over on my Bandcamp, there's a new Giant Drag exclusive EP. When Dashcam came out, we released the Devil Inside single, but over only on my Bandcamp, there's an entire live Giant Drag record with some of my favorite material. I guess I should have mentioned that. I've been in the studio working on a new Giant Drag record, and the second record was whatever. I didn't like the first one that much myself, but because I was a different person then. I got that weird baby voice, but now I have what is such a record that I think I'll be proud of. My best work is coming out of me now. Unfortunately, no one gives a shit really, but since you guys do, I'll tell you about that Bandcamp over at anniehardy.bandcamp.com, and I can send you guys a couple download codes or something so you can have it.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you again, Annie. And we would also like to send you just some items just for taking the time with us today. So we appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate you, what you are and who you are and what you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
And we hope to hear from you in the future.
I hope so. If nobody kills me, you will.
No, ma'am. Thank
you, Annie.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.